Good morning, Journey, and welcome to today's Daily Dose. We're almost 2 weeks into our series on the Sermon on the Mount. It's becoming clear that Jesus is focusing on the matters of the heart. He wants our hearts to be full of his love. He wants our hearts to be focused on him and on a relationship with him. He wants our hearts to be transformed to be more like his heart. And this morning we get to talk about a practice that is often overlooked in current day times, but this is a practice that can take your relationship with God to the next level. This practice can bring you closer to him than ever before. It can see prayers answered, it can see lives changed, and I believe it's a necessary step in transforming our hearts into God's heart. This practice is counter to the culture that we live in, and it's not easy, nor is it supposed to be. We see this practice over and over again in scriptures, and we see it modeled by Jesus. I'm talking about fasting. Let's dive into the word. Matthew chapter 6, verse 16 through 18. When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others they are fasting. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen. And your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. In these verses, Jesus was talking about the Pharisees. He could see their hearts, and he knew that their motivation to fast was not to draw closer to God. Rather, it was to put on a show and make sure everyone around them knew how holy and righteous they were. But Jesus is calling us to practice fasting in such a way that everyone around us is oblivious to what we are doing. He's calling us to private, intimate time with him. Those around us see our actions and our outward appearance, but God sees into our hearts. The whole point of fasting is to give up something in our everyday, day-to-day routine and to replace it with more time with the Lord. Fasting from food is probably the most traditional example, replacing the time you spend preparing and consuming food with time spent in prayer and relationship with God. But in practice, you can fast from television, you can fast from social media, you can fast from pretty much anything in your life. Whether you're fasting from food or something else, it is natural to find yourself yearning for what you've given up. And it's in those times that you need to turn to God. You need to call out to him, and you need to rely on him to get through the difficulty of denying yourself. So here are some simple tips for effective fasting. First, fast in secret, as described in our verses in Matthew chapter 6. Second, make sure your motivation for fasting is centered on God. Third, if you are planning on fasting from food, make sure you are physically prepared. This might include talking to your doctor to make sure that it's okay for you to fast. And remember, if you can't fast from food, don't worry about it. God cares about your heart, not what you're giving up. Fourth, meditate on Scripture and spend time in prayer and worship. Remember, it's all about spending more time with God. And lastly, prepare for opposition. Remember, Satan tempted Jesus in the desert when he fasted, so it probably won't be any different with you. If you're spending time in Scripture, in prayer, and in worship, you'll be well prepared to respond the same way that Jesus did in Matthew chapter 4. So as Jesus said in today's verses, if you fast like a Pharisee, you will already have received your reward by the responses of those around you. But if you fast in secret, your Father in heaven will reward you. And you can be assured that a closer relationship with him is a far, far, far better reward. So I'll challenge you today, Journey. Pray about these verses, and if God is calling you to a fast, answer him.